All right. What do you have for MVP?
Okay. I changed my mind a lot this season. I think everybody kind of liked the Tatum story, although it didn't seem realistic that he was going to win MVP. Then I felt like Jokic held it down for a couple months. Then there was an Embiid flirtation. And then I was pretty convinced it was going to be Giannis for me for a few weeks. The arguments were like, look, he's still the best player. They ended up getting the 1 seed, which is pretty remarkable considering Middleton, when he played in 33 games this year, is the worst he's been in 6 years.
Yeah.
And I wanted to not make it complicated, even though I felt like, as you know, if you've prepped this, if you wanted to do a 20-minute presentation on any of the 3 guys, your presentation would sound like there was no other option. And that's the problem with this year, is you have 3 great options. So I went through it all again. And the Embiid clutch stuff, not just the metrics, Embiid's the choice. And I thought it was going to be Giannis all week.
I have him too. And I think it's the right choice. And the only thing that annoys me about it is how annoying the Philly infrastructure was with some of the shit they pulled the last 2 months.
Or 2 years.
It should be more fun to figure this stuff out. And it shouldn't be, if people don't like your choice, then that means you hate their team or their player. Embiid was better this year than he was last year. It's just a fact. He offensively, I thought, was one of the best scoring centers I've ever watched in my life. And I was there, not a lot of TV of 1982 Moses, but he put up 31 a game, which was a fucking shitload back then. Robinson put up 30 a game. Shaq put up 30 a game. But for the most part, this was a historic scoring season. He averaged 33 a game. And it wasn't the old school overpowering people like Shaq. This was like real creative stuff. The stuff that he figured out finally around the free throw line, like you can see it from the numbers. His 10 through 16 feet, 43% last year is 51% this year. Last year from 16 plus, 43%. This year, 50%. Like there was slightly better. He was just felt slightly different, slightly more efficient, slightly more dominant. Just something was different. And, I hate the recency bias piece of it because some of his best games were in the last couple months. Jokic, like for instance, on Christmas, when he fucking eviscerated the Suns, he was like 45, 20, and 15, whatever. Like, I think we tend to remember the recent ones. But I think when you consider the pressure that team had, the fact that it felt like a do or die year for them in a lot of ways, the fact that he played the most games that he's played and he was playing 35 minutes a game with a lot of stuff running through him. He's a good defensive player. And I think it's the right choice. And I said this to House a few days ago, like, if I look at these last 5 years, Giannis having 2 and Jokic having 2 and Embiid having 1, kind of feels right for the last 5. Like I hate bringing past years into the MVP, but if Jokic wasn't like, oh my God, he's 100% the MVP again, it's really hard to vote. The 3 in a row is like sacred, like I really have to feel like, oh my God, you were definitely 100% the MVP. I thought Embiid was like just a whiff better. And I thought Defensive Player of the Year was harder, to be honest. I thought by the time we got to the end of the year, especially because it felt like Jokic and Denver kind of punted on this stuff and didn't seem like they cared, which is fine, but it made the decision easier,
Yeah, I mean, Jokic and Denver, he cost himself this one. He did.
Yeah, I think he did too.
They could say, oh, well, it doesn't matter as much as him. Okay, no shit. Congrats on not caring about this stuff as much. But, at one point they were 46-19 and they closed their last 17 games, 7-10. And I know Jokic didn't play in a couple of those. The recency bias thing is impossible to ignore. I try to go month to month. The historic part of it, I ignore it, but it's impossible for the 100 voters. Like, I'm telling you, I ignore it, but I still think like last year, Giannis probably would have won last year if he had never won before. And I voted him second. Like last year, I didn't have a hard time with this. So the only hesitation that like you would hear in my voice is that it just was really hard. This was really fucking hard. And that's why I think anybody that has a vote that catches shit from any of the fan bases, you're like, I don't want to hear it. You're just arguing your guy and being completely dismissive. So for me to build the case for Embiid, I don't really even want to shit on the other two guys because there's not really much to pick from. Denver limped to the finish line. Maybe that's because their own standings thing, but that's what happened. If Jokic wanted to, like there was a game the other night where he took like 3 shots. I was like, wait, is he going to try to go for like the season triple-double and even care about that? And Giannis, like there's some on-off stuff. And some of the advanced stuff he doesn't hold up against the other guys. That's not everything. The clutch stuff was really weird, and Embiid was incredible in it. I mean, Giannis is the better defender. I think the Embiid stuff at the rim is great. I think some of the other stuff on the perimeter, it can actually be a weakness for them depending on his mood that night. And Jokic is asked to cover a lot more ground, but clearly he's not even close to the defensive presence, especially around the rim, despite what some of the numbers have for him. But I feel good about it. But the only part of it is that it was really, I don't know if you agree. I felt it was so hard. It was so hard to go, hey, so anybody's like, oh, no, you guys are idiots. Like Embiid was a slam dunk. It wasn't for me.
Well, none of the guys got to 70 games, which this is, House and I covered this on Thursday, but this is one of the rare seasons where, the durability piece you had to almost throw out. It was the main reason Jokic won a couple years ago. It's the Giannis season. He missed 19 games, right? I don't feel like it was the best Giannis season just in general. I think for whatever reason, like even that shooting range thing I mentioned before, outside of 3 feet, he's shooting 35%, just in all categories, 4 feet it on. And the eye test kind of backs it up. He doesn't seem as automatic in those spots. Like I always liked him in that 10 to 16 foot range, and he hasn't been the same guy in that spot. I don't feel like this was a special Giannis season by any stretch. And it goes back to the MVP, that thing where I had the 4 rules for the MVP that I've been doing since my ESPN.com column in like 2004. And one of them was, who's the first guy you're going to think of when you think of the regular season, right? Because this is a regular season award. Who's the first guy you're going to think of? And for me, it would be Embiid. Because when you think about his backstory, and I remember watching him work out in 2014 and coming out of the workout and being like, and I wrote about it, like, this guy has to be the number 1 pick. I mean, this is ridiculous. Then he gets hurt. And then the process and comes back, the Kawhi shot, breaks his face in that other playoff series. The Ben Simmons thing just completely flames out. Like, there were so many ways this could have gone wrong. And for him to hit the point that he hit this year as a basketball player, I thought was really meaningful. So I feel good about voting for him for MVP. I think it's the right pick.
It was really tough. Like other years, it's easier. This one was really tough because I felt like with Giannis, but I would never use like the head-to-head. But when Milwaukee beat him not that long ago, and that's why like Doc annoyed me a little bit, being like, hey, this thing's over. It's over. It's like, so wait, tonight against Boston counts, but 2 days ago against Milwaukee doesn't fucking count? Like, because when I watched that game against Philadelphia, I'm like, why the fuck would you vote for anybody else? Vote for that guy. Vote for Giannis. Like, what the fuck's wrong with you? And I'm like, wait, it's just one game.
Well, he skipped the Denver game. I didn't like that he skipped the Denver game either. He kind of rested on the kicking Denver's ass that other game. It's like, all right, I'm going to just bank that one. I'll skip the other one because I've already won that matchup. But whatever. It was razor thin.
Yeah, and the same reason I wouldn't look at like an Embiid domination against Jokic and go like, oh, okay, the award's over. It's like, man, this is fucking 60 plus games this year. I mean, Giannis only missed 3 less games than Embiid did, so that wasn't a differentiator. If Embiid was a 6 or 7 seed here and Milwaukee was the 1 seed, then that would have changed it. But the standings were close enough, just like the standings, or at least overall record was close enough last year. And I think Jokic got a bump because the team around him last season completely fell apart. And if you go supporting cast, like even with the Middleton part of it, you still got Brooke, you still got Drew. And I just kept going around and around and around on this thing. And I just felt like it's not the best player award. It's who was the best this season. And that's why I feel good about the vote for Embiid, despite the struggle of getting there.
I have Jokic second, Giannis third. I have Tatum fourth. And I think I have SGA fifth. Yeah, I do. I have SGA fifth because, and here's the case for SGA. On top of the fact that he did 31 points a game, He was excellent defensively. I think he was, in other years, he was a borderline second team all defense guy. OKC, 5th through 8th total minutes. I'm just going to give you the names. These were the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th total minutes for the season. Isaiah Joe, Wiggins, Kenrich Williams, Man. Those were 5 through 8 for minutes. Trey Mann. Their leading rebounders were Giddey at 7.9 and Williams at 4.8. They were 30th in opposing rebounds. They were the worst team in the league for stopping the other team from getting rebounds, but they were first in turnovers. Whatever they created, he had to be good for it to work. They finished 40 and 42, which I think is like a miracle. Not having Chet on a team that was kind of built around Chet. And then they lose Poku too. They lose any size they have at all. They trade Muscala. They have no centers. And I just thought the clutch stuff was crazy with him. I thought he had a real swagger to him. And I just thought he was, ended up putting him over Fox and Sabonis because I thought he had a harder job. So there you go.
I went Embiid 1, Giannis 2, Jokic 3. I went Tatum 4 because it was all said and done. You know, he was the best player on the team that was a game out. You know, granted, Milwaukee and Boston may have handled things differently down the stretch, but that Washington loss, that Nets loss, now you're thinking, like, how's that going to go? But I have SGA 5th. So
I
we
think
have the same 5.
Tatum for Giannis was, I think, way closer for me than it was for you.
Yeah, it clearly was.
I had Giannis over Tatum, but I do think Tatum, there's a 10-game stretch in March that if he had played well and his stats were a little better, you could have really made the case just because it's just every stat backs him up. Every advanced stat, all the, you name it, the minutes that he played. I mean, he played 37.2 minutes a game. Like, he really had a real load to them in the tone that he set and the fact that he was so good. But he'll get there at some point. He's the first team All-NBA guy for the Celtics since KG. And really had a really special season. So to me, 25 years old, you're 4th in MVP. That's pretty good.